On June 5, two NASA astronauts boarded a spacecraft and headed towards the International Space Station. They were supposed to spend a few days there and then return, but what happened was that they remained trapped there and have not been able to return since then. They say that their people will not be able to return them until 2025. Of course, the issue caused a huge uproar in the American media and on social media platforms all over the world. So, what is the story of these astronauts who are trapped there and have not been able to return until now? And what is their fate? In 2014, NASA asked two companies, SpaceX and Boeing, to manufacture capsules or small space vehicles that would transport astronauts from Earth to the International Space Station and bring them back again. It signed a contract with Boeing for $4.2 billion and a contract with SpaceX with $2.6 billion, and of course it was expected that Boeing would win because it has the largest support and long history in the field of aviation, but what happened was completely the opposite. In 2020, SpaceX started its own astronaut transport program and created the Dragon capsule and succeeded in the first manned flight to the International Space Station was sent in May 2020. Since then, 8 manned flights have been sent and returned without any problems. On the other hand, Boeing has suffered many setbacks and lost about $1.4 billion. And they did not send a single flight until now or until 2024 when they decided that they would finally send their first private flight to the space station on board the Starliner capsule, which is unfortunately the ill-fated capsule that caused the problem that the astronauts trapped in the station are in now. Since this flight is the flight the first was for Boeing, so they decided that it would be a test mission. They would send 2 astronauts in their spacecraft to the station, where they would stay for 8 days and then return again to test the spacecraft on the way there and back. 2 astronauts were chosen, who were former pilots in the U.S. Navy: Barry Wilmore, 61, and Sunny Williams, his wife. The 58-year-old and the 2 unfortunately had bad luck with Boeing from the moment of takeoff. The Starliner capsule failed during the takeoff process more than once. The first time was in May and they were forced to cancel. The flight was postponed due to a problem that occurred in the pressure valve of the launch rocket. At the beginning of June, the flight was postponed again just 3 minutes before takeoff due to a malfunction in the launch computer. A few days later, on June 5, the flight finally took off from Cape Canaveral, but unfortunately things still did not go well. As expected, the Starliner capsule experienced a sudden leak of helium gas during takeoff, the primary function of which is to direct fuel to the propulsion systems. This in turn caused the failure of 5 engines out of 28. Therefore, as soon as they reached the International Space Station, they encountered difficulty in docking with the station, but after approximately 2 attempts, the ship docked normally, and after they got out of the ship they discovered the problem and the ground station contacted them and told them to stay there and not return at the time that was set because the ship had broken down and it would be dangerous for them to return to it, and indeed Barry and Sunny were present at the station from at that time. NASA had consulted with experts and specialists and they said that they would announce the final decision in the last week of August means a few more days, but in general, the options they have are 2 things, no third. The first thing is for the Boeing people on Earth to study the condition of the spacecraft and determine the technical problems in it and the detailed solution for each problem, and to direct the 2 astronauts to go out themselves. They are trying to fix the malfunction in the vehicle, and of course this will be done using the simple equipment and tools that are already present in the International Space Station. Unfortunately, more than 75 days have passed since this deadline, meaning they have less than 2 weeks left. It is clear that until now they are not able to make this decision, as evidenced by the fact that they have not done anything during the past 2.5 months. The second solution for repairing the vehicle, which NASA is largely considering, is for them to seek help from SpaceX, the fierce competitor of Boeing. SpaceX has a trip to the International Space Station that is supposed to launch next September. It will transport 4 spacecraft to the station, which its people are thinking about now. The SpaceX spacecraft travels to the International Space Station with only 2 people on board, not 4, and they leave 2 empty seats in the capsule. After they reach the station and finish the mission, they take Barry and Sunita with them on their way back. But if this happens, it means Barrio Sunita will not return until 2025 because SpaceX's mission is scheduled to end next February. That means Barrio Sunita, who was supposed to stay for 8 days, will stay for more than 8 months. The problem with the second scenario is that if SpaceX is the one that rescues the 2 astronauts, this will be a huge blow to Boeing, whose reputation will not only be in the mud. Of course, this emergency landing will cause them to lose the spacecraft completely, with all the millions spent on it. In addition, if the astronauts return to the SpaceX capsule, the Boeing and Helix spacecraft will take off instead of SpaceX. In other words, it will be a disaster. NASA sent a small capsule to the International Space Station via a SpaceX rocket, containing food, supplies, and suits for the two to wear, eat, and play. Finally, there is something very important. Barry and Sunita are not there alone. The station was originally. There are 7 other astronauts who arrived before them on Expedition 71 and who welcomed Barry and Sunita as soon as they arrived. The only problem is that in about a month all the astronauts there will return and only Barry and Sunita will remain, and the doctors say that their stay for such a long period, and even alone, is too much. Without a prior plan, it will have major negative effects on them, especially since they are both old, not young 61-58, and there is a high probability that they will suffer from osteoporosis due to weak gravity, in addition to muscle atrophy, which could happen to them because they will not use their muscles nearly as much while they are above this, in addition to vision problems. Because of the change in air pressure and the imbalance that occurs in the distribution of fluids in the body and a big night, Sony has already started to suffer from vision problems in the past period, and of course all of this is one thing, and the psychological problems that she will be exposed to are another thing, and she is completely isolated from the world, and it is not because they like isolation. It is as if they were there somewhere, they were stranded, and certainly during this entire period they would have been anxious and in a state of turmoil all the time.